So when you've got external resources like this, one of the problems that can happen is that you can't always access them. So, for example, somebody might have changed the name of a file or moved it, deleted it. If you're trying to access data from a website or a database, that might not be available, might be offline. And if that happens with this program or with earlier versions of this program, what would happen is the user would get some sort of error message like this. Now, ultimately, we can look at this and we can see, as a programmer, we can see, okay, it's telling us that the file people.csv isn't available, and it's even telling us which lines that occurred on. But as a user, that you may not be a programmer, you may not know anything about where the database lives, in fact. So this might be a very unhelpful message. It just looks like a load of gobbledygook. So what we try and do is handle this, and this feature is called an exception. It's generated by Python and it's called an exception, and we're going to try and handle that and deal with that in a nice way. Okay, so exceptions are things that happen when something unexpected goes wrong. Okay, so for example, file is not accessible, web page is not available, the computer, the tablet, the phone runs out of memory. All those things would generate exceptions. And most languages, Python not included, have ways of handling exceptions. And essentially, you decide, as a programmer, you decide which bit of code you're trying to handle exceptions for, and you wrap that between try and except statements. Okay, and if anything goes wrong in the middle of the execution of that block of code, so after the try statement, if anything goes wrong, the execution of the code will jump down to the except statement, and then you can handle it in a much more elegant way. You can give the user a nice error message. You may not be able to recover the program because obviously if you've got a database, you're trying to read in from a database, the database has disappeared or is unavailable, the program isn't going to work. But at least you can give the user something that they can perhaps try and investigate. Is their computer offline? Okay, so in our UniApp code, in fact, this is really straightforward, and it hardly involves any extra changes. Okay, now there's various places I can put this try and accept block in, but I've decided to put it at the top level in the main code in the UniApp 07. Okay, so, and I've highlighted in yellow the extra bits of code. So you can see there's only 5 lines here that I need to put in. So the bit of code that I'm concerned about things going wrong, where the code is trying to access the CSV files, is all contained in here. Okay, let's actually have a look at it. So database 07, all that stuff that I showed you about processing the CSV file, that's all contained in a function in here called getUsers. So if anything goes wrong, the code execution, if halfway down this file something goes wrong, the code execution will jump out throwing an exception. And what I do to handle that then is what I showed you up here. I just wrap that bit of code, the call to get users, I wrap that in a try and accept block, and I can then give the user a nice warning message. In this case, it's a message box. It just pops up a message box. So I need this line here to import the message box from part of tkinter, and I can just pop that up. And I set the users, if that happens, I set the users to be an empty list. I can't access the data, so I can still run the app, but there are no users because I can't access the data about them. So that's the kind of message that you get. And the app will still run, it just won't have any users listed. So let me show you that. Suppose, for example, let's just Shift F6, rename that file to people1. Okay, now people1, the code's expecting a file called people.csv. There is no file called people.csv anymore. So when I run this, Control Shift F10, you get this error message. You also get this window. I should get rid of that. You get this error message, cannot connect to database, but then the UniApp runs. It's just that there won't be any users, so if I try and send a message to all of them, there are no users If I send a message, you'll see in the output there's no message is sent because there are no users in the system. So we can only partially handle these errors. If there's something goes catastrophically wrong, like we can't connect to the database, then we just haven't got any information about the users. But at least we can give a warning message. We could say to the user, try see if the program is offline, see if the file has been moved or something like that. Okay, let's finish the video there, and then we'll look at memory errors in the next example.